Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? He was frustrated by her hoarding. She was frustrated by his utter uselessness. He filed for divorce, and she was my client. Her prized possession was a room or two full of scrapbooking materials. His prized possession was a yard full of junk cars that he never worked on. They had no children and no real assets. They hated each other more than any two people I'd ever met, and the only terms they would agree to were these: he gets the scrapbooking stuff, and she gets the cars. My client also took the house, as he had no income, and didn't want it anyway. It was the shortest divorce decree I ever drafted. I intentionally squeezed it onto one page, and the judge and I had a good laugh over it. Once the decree was signed and filed, she hauled all the scrapbooking stuff to the yard, and he removed it to the dump. She then called a junk shop I referred her to, and had all of his cars removed from the yard. Edit. These two also fought over a toilet brush, as he didn't want to have to buy one when he moved out. I politely instructed my client to give him the goddamn toilet brush. I had some friends get divorced because she legit hated Dale Earnhardt, and he legit hated Jeff Gordon. Oh man, this brings back childhood memories. Kind of related story that totally doesn't matter. Growing up, my dad was big into NASCAR and loved Dale Earnhardt. Hated Jeff Gordon, of course. I loved Dale too, but I also secretly loved Jeff and hid it. I must have been around 6, 8ish. One day while the race was on, I was so upset about betraying my dad or something by liking Jeff Gordon that my mom found me crying in my room. After I told her why I was upset, she went and got my dad, and he sat and told me it was okay for me to like Jeff Gordon even if he doesn't, that I'm allowed to like whatever I want that makes me happy, and that nothing more would make him happier. Then he hugged me and told me to come watch the race and cheer him on. Later that week he got me a number 24 sticker to put on my mirror in my room. I don't know, I don't have very many good memories in my life, but that is one of them. He had an argument with the new in-laws during the wedding and moved out at around 5 AM during the first night. Marriage speedrun. Your princess is in another castle. Wasn't the reason, but it happened during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court, they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap, they were effing Tupperware. Holy shit. I read this as grandmother's bowels and was very confused / concerned. My client was the outrageous one, so my heart went out to his poor wife. He had OCD, which manifested primarily financially, so he made their lives a penny pinching hell. Examples: he was obsessed with avoiding unnecessary driving, wear and tear on the car, gas expenses, so he cut the whole family's hair at home and never let them eat at a restaurant or go to the movies. Weirdest of all, he kept one toilet paper roll on him at all times, and you had to get one square from him before you could go to the bathroom. He never gave more than one square. Wife finally got fed up and left him when 1, he gave her bangs during an in-home haircut, and 2, their daughter was so traumatized by the toilet paper thing they couldn't potty train her. Also, he hated paying his divorce lawyer bill. He was also an old-fashioned mega Catholic who considered divorce a deadly sin. He viewed my whole job as an unnecessary and sinful expense. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client shocker started dating another woman and methinks began using hard drugs. He used a loot of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. Staff attorney for a judge. Not a divorce, but a custody modification hearing. Ex-wife wanted sole L&P custody of the kids because the ex-husband was spending all his money on a palm reader / psychic and refused to pay child support. On cross, ex-wife's attorney got him to admit that he was spending all his discretionary income on this psychic. He said he had spent over $5,000 on readings and other services there. Judges frequently chime in with questions in domestic matters, so my judge asked why he was not paying support as his divorce decree required. His explanation was the psychic could read that his children were provided for without his money and he would be able to repay the ex when he takes the children to Mexico permanently to seek great riches there, which my judge read as my psychic told me to kidnap my kids. TL. Doctor, deadbeat ex-husband spent all his money on a psychic rather than child support. Told the judge he intended to kidnap his children. I was a legal assistant when this case came in, but this lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. She was kidnapped in Mexico and he refused to pay ransom. Eventually her family managed to pay, and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous as in petty, but outrageous as how absurd that is. I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a night light, but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school coworkers were his best chums and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I shit you not. A recently married couple of 2 years broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw a connection between the dog and future children. I worked for a law office where the owner would talk about the man who sued for divorce because his wife would no longer allow him to use a loaded gun as a marital aid. She had apparently agreed to it at some point and was fine with the gun as long as it was empty, but that just wasn't good enough for him. Eater, since some folks need it spelled out by marital aid, I mean a dildo. He wanted to stick a loaded gun in her vagina as part of their sex routine. She was down for it as long as the gun was empty, but that wasn't good enough and he thought this was reasonable grounds for divorce. He got drunk at the wedding. She did not like it and decided to divorce him right after the honeymoon, which she went to without him. Moreover, this was all an elaborate scheme of divorce robbery because the guy was loaded and so was his entire family. They were loaded because they were a family of excellent lawyers and he was a third-generation lawyer with all the smarts and experience of his predecessors combined. Let's just say it did not go well for her. The dog he bought me pissed on the carpet. Was a loud chewer at the dinner table. He developed a complex and literally needed out as he couldn't bear to eat with her. Taught the parakeet certain cuss words for his wife. Ha ha ha. The parrot lives with the man now. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked shit about him whilst he was there. Was only when he recorded a conversation whilst they were there and got it translated he found out what was going on. This is a great question. I'm going to search through some older threads to find relevant answers and post my favorites here. Just Caroline said, I heard of a woman that had her marriage annulled because the groom insisted to bring his mother on their honeymoon. Then, on the honeymoon the bride discovered the reason he wanted to bring his mother was to breastfeed him. Yes, the groom, a grown man, was still breastfeeding. Raven Hair Beauty said, divorce lawyer here. One client filed for divorce because he owed his bookie $70,000. He didn't want to leave his wife, but he figured he would get half the house in the divorce, which was worth $700,000, and pay his debts. He had already blew through their life savings gambling. He was the worst guy. Deleted user said, not me but my friend who specializes in family law. Wife wanted to divorce husband because he kept taking their dogs for walks while she was at work, making it unintentionally so they'd rather cuddle the husband instead of her after a long day. Gthiad said, I met a divorce lawyer in India and you know what's unique for a divorce lawyer in India? Divorce. The profession didn't really exist until about 15 years ago, and even now it's very difficult convincing people that they really do need a divorce because it's so shameful in the culture. Blank Smitty said, I had a client file for divorce because every morning his wife would ask him how he takes his coffee for 7 years. If you liked the video, please consider to hit that subscribe button and the bell for future uploads. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.